So 2020, huh? Yeah, it's been a weird year. It's been a tough year for country music. It's also been a weird year, but it's been a year of abundance when it comes to great music. So many great albums. We don't have live shows anymore. Our music videos are different. They're fewer and further between. Performances on YouTube and Instagram are the new concert. And for now, anyway, in days and weeks to come, I'm probably going to touch on the EPs that came out this year and talk about 2021, which I'm excited for. But I want to do my top 10 favorite albums of 2020. And so without further ado, number 10 is Ain't Looking Back by Mo Pitney. Before listening to this album, I had no idea who Mo Pitney was. I had never heard of him. He just showed up on Apple Music under new releases. I thought, well, that looks a little bit interesting. Clicked on it. Saw track number 1, A Music Man featuring Jamie Johnson. Yeah, you put Jamie Johnson on your track list, you're going to get me as a listener, at least once. And I listened to it once and loved it. At the time, I was thinking like Heartache Medication style. I love this album. I've tempered back on it a little bit. It's landed at number 10 on this list. I feel good about that. It's really solid. It's got a classic neo-trad sound, neo-traditional sound. I call it the revival sound because we sort of had neo-traditional in the late 80s and 90s. It sort of went away for some really bad country music, and it's working its way back now. And I think Mo Pitney could be a major voice in that revival of that sound if he makes it to the level that I think he deserves. This isn't a mainstream album, but I'm hearing Not Bad for a Good Old Boy, Local Honey. Those are radio tracks, and they're really good songs also, but they belong on radio, and I think he belongs in the mainstream conversation. I don't know why he's not. I'm pretty sure he's based out of country and has a lot of industry people around him, but for whatever reason, it hasn't happened yet. Mattress on the Floor is another standout song. Great writing. And that's his whole album. Great instrumentation, great classic country sound, great lyrics, great voice. He reminds me a bit of Josh Turner. His voice is deep like that, and the music gives out major Josh Turner vibes. A lot of like sort of Christian overtones and stuff, religious overtones. Really, really, really good album. I highly recommend this if you haven't listened to it. If you like John Party, Midland, Luke Combs, sort of that new classic country sound, definitely check this album out. Number 9 is Elisabeth by Zach Bryan. You know who Zach Bryan is if you're on YouTube. You've heard him or seen him. He's a viral sensation. The new album, Elisabeth, I think is slightly better than his debut, Deanne. The songwriting is super potent on this album. Like always with him, he just has a way with words that make you feel what he's saying more than the average artist. He sort of leans into that new Appalachian sound, and especially with his lyrics, like Benjamin Todd, Arlo McKinley, and of course Tyler Childers, who I think he's admitted he is a major inspiration of his. Because he sometimes sounds like he may be copying Tyler Childers, that takes a little bit away from this album for me. But just a little bit, because it's still very raw and emotional and authentic feeling and sounding. The DIY sound works perfectly for him. I'm curious how, he has said that from now on, he's going to have better produced music. I know the new EP is slightly better quality of production, but it still works because of the way he does it. It's still a very stripped down acoustic sound. The harmonies are imperfect but really nice, but that's the EP. This album still very DIY, and I love it. I think it works brilliantly for him. It sounds like a sort of work tape, but if this was the work tape, the album we don't even deserve that kind of album. This is an excellent collection of songs. The ones that stand out most: Messed Up Kid, Old Man, and Heading South. But it's hard to pick just a few. The whole track list is great. Number 8 is Ashley Ray, Pauline. Ashley Ray is from Lawrence, Kansas. I believe is now in Nashville. She is a great songwriter, has written for a lot of great artists. Little Big Town, Lori McKenna. She has either written for or with Lori McKenna. I'm not sure which song it is, but I read it. So the title track, Pauline, is a really great song about how her grandma passed and, she left her cousins and aunts and all these people. She left them all these different material objects, but she got her name, Pauline, and she got her character and her spirit and her attitude and how that sort of is what's most important and how she'll live on through her. It's just a really great song to catch you right away. Of course, title track, it's a smart idea to catch you right away and to put you in the mood for that whole album, and that's exactly what it does. Later on, there's a song called Slurry, which is a really boozy sort of barroom track. Really, really good. There's just a lot of personal stories on this album. It's got some humor mixed in, it's very sentimental, it's reminiscent, very perpendent, and just very contemplative. I just recommend it highly. I know a lot of people probably haven't heard of it. I think it's a very under the radar album, but it's very, very good. She sounds nothing like anyone else I know of, so to recommend her for certain fans of certain artists, I can't really do. If you like good country music that has a good sound, great lyrics, great music, this is a great album. Number 7 is A Rock by none other than Hardy. You know who he is. Everyone knows who he is. So Rednecker came out, and it piqued my interest, but it also sort of piqued my skepticism. He dropped Hicks tape, and it sort of confirmed a lot of my skepticism. Had a few bright spots, One Beer being one of them. But I wasn't very optimistic for this album. Then it came out, and upon the first listen, it was exactly what I expected from Hardy. Sonically, the voice, everything. One thing was different, though, and I guess I suspected this, and this is why Rednecker piqued my interest, because of the lyrics and the imagery, the specificity of the lyrics. He is just a really good songwriter, and the production is nice, not surprising. It fits sort of in with the mainstream sound, but it's also very different. The main reason why is just the superb songwriting. A lot of times, instrumental tracks like this would be accompanied by worse lyrics and worse singers than Hardy, and so it helps a lot. There's no really need to break down track by track, because we've all heard this album, I think, by now. Either you love it or you hate it. I guess there may be some people in the middle, but he's a pretty polarizing guy, Hardy. Like I said, it's different than mainstream country, but it's not reinventing the wheel, because it does follow a lot of the same themes. It follows all the same themes. It's just done so much better than what you hear on the radio typically. And I think that if I were to personally compare Hardy to anybody, I think he is, if you take Kid Rock and that whole vibe and you give it talent, both as a songwriter and as a singer, and put him with great producers, this is what comes out. I think whatever genre Kid Rock has sort of created with his unique sound, Hardy has taken it and said, oh, this is what this genre sounds like when a good artist makes that music. And this is not to insult Hardy by comparing him to Kid Rock, or to insult Kid Rock, because I'm from Michigan. I like me some Kid Rock. I love me some Kid Rock. But when I put on Hardy, I get that same vibe. It just, there's no shame when I put on Hardy and get that vibe. And so that's just what I think. Speaking of that Kid Rock sort of vibe, Cadillac 3. Number 6, Cadillac 3. Which one? Is it Country Fuzz? Of course, it's not Country Fuzz. It is Tabasco and Sweet Tea by the Cadillac 3. When Country Fuzz came out, is it even called? I don't even know for sure it's called Country Fuzz. Hot Fuzz comes up for some reason. Is it Hot Fuzz? I can't even remember the name of the album Cadillac 3 put out earlier in the year. I listened to it once all the way through and never again. There might be one or two that I listened to, like one or two tracks I listened to a few other times. I might have put them in a playlist, but I was not a fan. I thought it was blah, just very blah. But there was a couple of tracks that I liked that had this sort of funk sound to it. What they did was they took those moments of very interesting funkiness and they extrapolated that across an entire album with Tabasco and Sweet Tea, and it works freaking perfectly, in my opinion. It sounds like an entirely new like fusion genre of country, funk, soul, R&B, little hip hop, pop, of course. And it does that without sounding forced at all. And it doesn't even really sound experimental. It is. It's got to be. No one has really done this sound that the Cadillac 3 are doing here. But, a lot of times when people try new things, it ends up sounding experimental. I don't know if I don't really know how to explain what I mean there. I think if you know what I mean, you know what I mean. There's no lapses here. It's a really solid all the way through album. The lyrics aren't outstanding by any stretch of the imagination, but they are imaginative. They're funny and a little raw and a little blue collar and I dig them a lot. I dig this album a whole hell of a lot. It's probably very polarizing among those who have heard it, I'm sure. There are definitely some I don't know, Bruno Marsian sort of uptown funk type of funk. I don't know. I just was struck by it right away, and every time I listen to it, I vibe all the way through. I love it. The last 3 songs of the album, Money Ain't Shit, If You Ain't Got Love, just fantastic jam. Turn the Radio On. It's about turning the radio on in a way of having music that they want to play on the radio, and how it's a long road if you can't turn the radio on. So it's really great. And then they have a sort of egotistical band anthem at the end. It's called Cornbread on Sabbath. Really good. It sounds like Parliament Funk and Alabama got together and made an album that actually worked. I love it. Number 5 is Josh Abbott Band, The Highway Kind. If you're a fan of the Texas music scene, you probably know. You're probably very familiar with Josh Abbott Band. It's just very accessible music. It's got really solid songwriting. There's a few tracks that sound very mainstream Nashville. Little More You and Women and Wishes. Those are the 2 tracks that they sound like they could be on the radio. They might even be. I'm sure one of them has to be in Texas. Those are hit songs, and I love them. I think they're really great. But the whole track list is song after song that is just a perfect mix of lyrics and music and accessibility and depth, and really just I didn't really want to include it on this list because I feel like it's just a personal preference, this album. I don't know. I really like every single track, and there's not a lot I can say to really defend it other than it's good. It's a good album, and that's why it's at number 5. That's how much I like it. Number 4 is The Balladeer by Lori McKenna. Lori McKenna is one of the best songwriters out there. I think we all know that. All of us have at least one song that she's written that we love, even if we know it or not. She has a knack for putting out really great albums. I think everyone that knows who she is knows that about her. This is another record that I can't help but feel every song. She is that good at writing songs. I think if you're a parent, especially if you're a mother, you probably can easily vibe to this whole album. As a married father of 3, I can definitely relate to most of what she's saying. She talks a lot about the day-to-day, family life, the intricacies and drama of that, and the emotion of dealing with the problems that come from putting yourself out there and building a family, or being from a large family, or whatever it is. The instrumentation is really great on the album, and the production is really good, and that's really all that you need when you have a talent like this. Whether it's the voice or the songwriting, you put good music and production behind that, and you're going to have a great album every time. And this is no exception to that rule. Lori McKenna is always going to be great. And real quick, before I do my top 3, I just want to talk about the honorable mentions. This has been a big year. I've listened to almost 100 albums, country albums. It was really hard to narrow this list down to 10, and so I'm going to put a list of all the albums I've listened to this year ranked down in the description. And so I just real quick want to go through what would have been my number 11 through number 20, because I didn't want to make this a really long video. I really would have rather have done a top 20, but I didn't want to make it a really long video. So real quick, number 20, Brandy Clark, Your Life is a Record. Number 19, Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit, Reunions. Number 18, John Baumann, Country Shade. Number 17, Randy Rogers and Wade Bowen, Hold My Beer, Volume 2. Number 16, Corb Lund, Agricultural Tragic. Number 15, Hailey Whitters, The Dream. Really good album, by the way, guys. Really good album from a young newcomer. Number 14, the Panhandlers album by the Panhandlers. Check that out. Number 13, Ward Davis, Black Cats and Crows. Number 12, another new group, Muscadine Bloodline, Burn It at Both Ends. Really surprisingly great album. And number 11, and this was so hard to leave him off the list, but I was looking at him and Mo Pitney, and I really wanted to give the nod to Mo Pitney. But Gabe Lee, Honky Tonk Hell, excellent album. Really good songwriting. Really, really good songwriting. And so let's get back to my top 3 favorite albums of 2020. Number 3 is Keep 'Em on Their Toes by Brent Cobb. I love Brent Cobb. This album sounds like 2020. It's somber, serious, a little bit of humor, very wise, blue-collar wisdom and some wit. You know, there's Shut Up and Sing, Sometimes I'm a Clown, This Side of the River, Soapbox, Dust Under My Rug, When You Go, The World Is Ending, Little Stuff. Like, every song on this album has an excellent message, and it's delivered with like this charm and a steady balance of like humble wisdom. The way that Brent Cobb does so well, it's just, oh man, the album will always remind me of what it was like to live in 2020. And I think that could be true for anybody, anywhere. This album just feels like it's, I don't know how to describe it. It just feels perfect for this year. If it weren't for the 2 legends ahead of this guy, this might have been my favorite album of the year. Which brings me to number 2, and that is Chris Stapleton with Starting Over. Chris Stapleton's voice is from the heavens. There's no other way to describe it. We're lucky, so lucky, to be country fans in an era where Chris Stapleton is its biggest star. I mean, whew, we're lucky. And he put out this album. This feels much more like the follow-up to Traveler than From a Room, Volume 2 or 1, for that matter. Volume 1 was better. But in my opinion, Volume 1 was better than Volume 2. That's another conversation. This gives you exactly what you wanted from a Chris Stapleton album. It has, real quick, the hardcore, hard-hitting, powerful songs. Cold, Arkansas, Hillbilly Blood, Whiskey Sunrise, Watch You Burn, which is a son of a bitch of a song. So good. They give you like the power that you want from Chris Stapleton's voice, and their production is great. The Devil Made Me Think Twice, or The Devil Always Made Me Think Twice. That was put on, Hailey Whitters put that on her album too. I don't know which I prefer because they both bring something different, but that's another song that just, man, Cold is going to be a classic forever. You can't help but scream along with that lyric, man. It's so good. It reminds me of Sometimes I Cry, the way the emotion you feel, but in the opposite direction. Cold, it's the same emotion, but you're feeling it differently than in Sometimes I Cry, which was, I can't remember what album. Was that Traveler? Damn, I can't remember what album that was on. I think it was Traveler. Yeah, I think it was Traveler. But anyway, then you have the sweetness, the soft side, the emotional side. Not that the hard power side isn't emotional, maybe even more so. But the more delicate side, you have When I'm With You, Joy of My Life. 2 tracks that a lot of people may say are a little bit boring, but I think they're sweet. I like them a lot. Maggie's Song, which is a fantastic song about a dog. It's country music, guys. Nashville, Tennessee. We can break that down another time, what it means exactly. But it's a really great song too. A perfect closer, and not to mention starting over. It's such a perfect way to start the album. This reminds me of the Ashley Ray Pauline album that I was talking about, where you have a title track that starts the album out that perfectly lays out what the album's going to be, and then he delivers all the way through. This is an excellent album. It would undoubtedly be my favorite album of the year if it weren't for Who's That Number One and the album she put out. So I'm just going to get to it. My favorite album of the year. It's been my favorite album since the day it was released. This was an event for me. I was looking forward to her album a lot. A lot of you probably were too. It's Never Will by Ashley McBryde. Shit, guys. She is probably, after Eric Church and Chris Stapleton, my favorite artist in country music right now. I just forgot about John Party. Sorry, John. But Ashley McBryde delivers on every single song in different ways. Hang in there, girl. That's Ashley McBryde. I mean, if you want like the template that makes her what she is as an artist, Hang in There, Girl is that. And then you have One Night Standards, which is a really nice country song. It's got a classic vibe to it. What it's done on radio has been awesome to see. That has been a hit, relatively speaking. It's great to see great artists get hits, especially female artists on country radio. First Thing I Reach For, great track, classic. Vibe, again. She's not changing what country music is. She's fitting it to her style, though, and making it something new. This sort of reminds me, it's in the same vein as Everything I Love Is Killing Me by the man, Alan Jackson. Then you have Voodoo Doll, which hits hard. The production is heavy. The lyrics are amazing about how she can feel everything that her man is doing as he cheats, man. She can feel it in her gut. She can feel it in her bones, making her skin crawl. Just fantastic. Cutting grass, on the John Deere, and the noise is loud, but that song cuts through. I listen to that every time I cut the grass all summer long because it bangs, dude. And then you have Sparrow, which is a beautiful song. Again, thematically, it isn't a new territory, but she does it so well. Martha Divine is better than Goodbye Earl. That I'm just gonna put that out there. It's a similar type of song. I don't mind the Dixie Chicks. Not a big fan. Not a fan. I don't really like the Dixie Chicks that much, but that was a good song. But this song, Martha Divine, puts a new twist on the revenge song. It's a daughter fighting for her mom. You hear that in country music and in a lot of other genres too, where the sons stand up for the mothers. This is a daughter standing up for the mom. She goes ahead and she just kills her dad's mistress. That's all. I mean, it's awesome. And it's witty too. It's got, I got this feeling and I got this shovel between me and you and it. You're in a little trouble. She's got it's not murder if I bury you alive. It's fantastic. Stone, great song about, as far as I can tell, connecting with a very cold-hearted brother. They've gone through tragedies together, trying to connect. Stone is very McKenna-esque. I believe McKenna writes on this. Lori McKenna writes on this album, but that's not a McKenna song. But Stone feels that way. Never Will is the perfect title track for this album, and I love that it's at the end of the album. That's something different. Because it brings all of this through and then wraps it up in this package. And it's a really well done song. She reminds me a little bit of like if Reba McEntire had more of a rock edge. She just reminds me of that. She gives me Reba McEntire vibes. Maybe it's because I'm a big fan of hers and I grew up on Reba McEntire with my mom being a big fan of hers. But that being said, the album doesn't actually close on this song, and that's the one problem I have with this album. And it is a problem. It's an imperfect album. This song, Styrofoam, is fun at the end, but man, it just kills the vibe a little bit after Never Will. And so I just skip it. And it's its own thing, and it's on some playlists, but there is a flaw, but everything that's great is flawed, right? So that's what it is. All right, guys. Well, that is my list of my 10 favorite country albums of 2020. The worst year ever, but it's a pretty damn good year for country music. Okay? Peace out. Bye.